What is going on, YouTube people? New York Cards and Comics here. I got a couple things we want to chat about today. Yes, we're going to touch on CT scanning, but ever so briefly because this is a horse that has been beaten to death. Also, going to touch on a new hobby lawsuit as Topps is going after the seller of the duplicate 101 Superfrackers. Remember that whole bunch of nonsense and shenanigans from late 2023? So we are going to dive into both those, just kind of combine them both into one video. First, I was a guest. Episode dropped last night on Sports Card Nonsense. Gio and Jesse kind enough to have me on. Something we had actually been trying to do for a while, but scheduling conflicts kept getting in the way. And by that, I mean Gio giving me 5 minutes notice on when he wanted me on an episode. But we set something up at the National, so I popped on there as the third man for about 30 to 45 minutes on their most recent episode, so go check that out. I will be interviewing a guest that was supposed to be on Monday afternoon, but that got delayed till next week. So I will be having an interview coming up very shortly with a member from a large hobby company. So we will tease that for a segment next week. Should be a good sit down. Let's get back into the two main topics. CT scanning. So I did that video last week where, I kind of had like a bad feeling vibe about how this could potentially go with this interview that Sports Card Madness did with the company that was running the CT scanning business. And in the tease / lead up to that video, they had hinted that there was going to be bombshells dropped and, we were going to get maybe not necessarily names, but you were going to be able to piece names together based off the information that they had in this interview. So, everyone gets all hyped up for it. A lot of people were talking behind the scenes about it. And then I don't know what happened. The interview dropped, and at the very beginning of it, he talks about having to cut 10 minutes out of the interview, which we can all assume that was the 10 minutes that people really cared about. There was some good little nuggets of information in here, but for the most part, it was things that we had kind of already known or speculated about that were basically just confirmed for us. But the air quote juicy bits, drama bits, the part all of us were waiting to hear, were omitted for whatever reason. So we don't really know what happened in that 10 minutes, but it sounds like someone got cold feet, whether they got pressure on them from outside sources or the company got pressure. The way that they describe it was either cut the 10 minutes or the interview was not going to run at all. So they made a choice to do that. Now, as a content creator myself, I don't know what was said. Obviously, I don't know what the behind the scenes conversations were. I don't know what, if any, threats were made. So I'm not going to back chair Armcore or Monday morning quarterback this too much, but the tease and the lead up to it, I think, made this playoff worse than it was. If we didn't know, if this wasn't hyped up prior to going into it and then the 10 minutes got cut, I don't think it would have felt as bad. But the fact that it was, this is going to be a nuclear bomb dropped on the hobby, and then the 10 minutes that was going to be the nuclear bomb isn't in there, I think was a big letdown for a lot of people. The comment section did not seem very happy about this at all. The major talking point coming out of this really seems to be like the ethical, moral side of things. If someone does this, like basically the company's coming out and saying, we aren't at fault with what people do. We are getting something sent into us to scan. We are scanning it, providing those results, and then we are washing our hands of it. And essentially saying whatever the person does with it at that point is up to that individual person. When, right, wrong, or indifferent, I mean, I guess probably legally speaking, that's true. I'm no lawyer. I don't believe the fraud aspect of this kicks in until if the person had knowledge of what was in the box, then tried to sell it. That's where fraud would kick in, but that's going to be pretty tough to prove. The one thing that they did address was, how do you prevent them from swiping stuff, basically? And they were talking about tamper evident bags, which is actually a pretty good idea. That is not something that I thought about. And those do work for the most part. I actually have to use tamper evident serial numbered bags in my day job on occasion. So I am fairly familiar with at least some of those, and they do a pretty decent job. The other thing that they hinted at was possible methods of applying things to the boxes that the manufacturers could do to either prevent this and or flag it that a box has been scanned. Now, interesting side note to this, I was watching Spitball and Card. Shout out to those guys. Great podcast over there. Teapot, who is a member of Sports Card Investor Team, was mentioning that, like Jeff has been in contact with Topps and Fanatics about this, and that they are well aware and they are taking this very seriously. It sounds like they don't have any details to launch on it yet, but they are, as a manufacturer, are very much aware of this and may potentially be working on a solution already, or at least testing things. So it sounds like at least Topps and Fanatics is taking this extremely seriously. So maybe going forward with higher end wax, this gets cleaned up a little bit, at least initially. But there's still a large gap of basically anything from the early 90s through today that would be suspect to this. And I really don't know how you fix that. That's probably a bigger topic for a bigger day. Like I said, I don't want to spend too much time on this. There's been a billion videos on CT scanning already, and I don't know that there's anything really new here to add. There's probably interesting ethical discussions to have, but that's probably a video in its own right. I did just want to give a little bit of an update on it because we had that kind of doom and gloom thing last week. And I do think this is probably happening way more than anyone wants to admit, especially on the high end. Like I said, the implications we're here are at least some large-scale breakers could potentially be using this already. So if that is indeed the case, then that would obviously send things down some crazy rabbit holes on its own. The other thing I wanted to touch on really quickly, Topps. Topps is suing Timothy Dodd. Timothy Dodd is the person behind that, I believe it was like DFW Card Shark or whatever eBay account. If you remember way back at the end of 2023, there was duplicate superfractors from 2023 Bowman. One particular seller had a bunch of them. In addition to that, that seller had a bunch of Panini stuff as well. And if you remember, Panini and Topps stuff was printed in the same factory. That same factory was located very close to where that eBay seller lived. You could start putting the math together. And it was appearing that things were getting backdoored. The seller had, I think it was Baseball Card Blog did like the math on it, like 20% of the superfractors in Bowman they had listed on eBay at one point in time. And they had a bunch of low numbered serial number Panini like Spectra basketball and football patches that would be nearly impossible to acquire all of them. So clearly something shady was going on, and Topps has fired back and sent suit at them, I believe, in upwards of $250,000. It does not say how they got them. I am guessing that would come out if this ever went to trial. But they just say that it was acquired by unlawful means. So whether it was that person getting them or maybe they were going through a third party, we don't really know. It would kind of be interesting if this actually did go to trial and we got to kind of get a little peek behind the scenes on that. We don't know if this guy's guilty or innocent. Obviously, innocent until proven guilty. But it would be pretty scary as just like random eBay seller guy staring down the Fanatics attorney team. That is probably not something you want to mess around with. And worst case scenario, they would just run you out of money, most likely. So I wouldn't be surprised if this probably ends up settling if the person is indeed complicit. We'll see. Maybe they have a defense for it, and we'll see what that is. Hopefully they kind of do, because it would be interesting to see this actually go to trial. And once again, shout out to Paul Lesko for bringing this up and kind of running it through, the bare bones of it. You could check out his Twitter page for more details on it. I actually had the chance to talk with Paul Lesko at this year's National. Got to sign his jersey. If you don't know, Paul Lesko attends the National pretty much every year, and he has a baseball jersey that he has. Basically anyone that's ever interacted with him, whether you're a content creator or not, can sign his jersey. He's got, hundreds of signatures on it. Wonderful person. Actually, myself and Ryan that runs GemRate had a good 15-20 minute chat with him downstairs in the lounge. But overall, great person, provided a lot of great information for the hobby over the years. And this is just the latest piece. So we'll see what happens with this. You see if Topps gets any traction with this in this suit against the potential thief, or at least someone that was involved with how these cards were getting backdoored from that plant. That obviously caused a huge black eye for Topps, their PR and general trust of the company. Remember, that was a major issue when that came up. The sanctity of the 1 of 1 and how those got out into the wild was a big deal. And their brand definitely took a hit from it. I mean, go back and look at all the videos and stuff that were made about that, all the content that surrounded that whole bunch of nonsense. So we'll see what happens with this. Hopefully it goes to court. Like I said, it would kind of be interesting to see it play out, but I kind of doubt that it will. It's usually how these things tend to wrap up. That is all I got for you, boys and girls. As always, curious for your thoughts and comments down below. We will catch you on the next one. Peace.